It's widely accepted that when you upgrade your factory tubes to NOS tubes, it's usually a step forward. Well, what happens when you upgrade to NOS tubes and it's a step backwards? A really big step backwards. Let's find out. So I love the sound of tubes. I find it's more organic, more lifelike. Typically music has more texture. Even the best solid state can sound really, really good. But at the end of the day, there's something that a well-designed piece of gear gives me that solid state doesn't. That's why I've got a tube DAC, I've got a tube integrated, and my love for tubes started 25 years ago. I had an EAR integrated amp, their 834. Love that. And it's one of maybe 3 or 4 pieces of gear that over the decades I really miss. It was wonderful. So even though I went through the spell recently of solid state, various Luxman and other gear, very, very nice gear, I miss the tubes. So the first thing I did was I added an Aqua La Scala tube DAC, and I realized that, man, I knew it could be great, but there was something about the stock tubes that wasn't doing it for me. I put about almost 600 hours of burn-in on it. It needed a lot of burn-in. And I think we can all agree that for the most part, today's current crop of tubes are nothing like old stock tubes for a variety of reasons. So the first thing I did on that was reached out to my tube dealer. Tube dealer, man, it sounds like, we're dealing it in the back alley here. Talked to him about what I was looking to do sound-wise, and he suggested upgrading to RCA blacktops, if memory serves me correct. And I did. I upgraded to the RCA blacktops. It immediately gave me a step forward in sound in terms of more spacious, more open, more lifelike, better bass. I love bass. But the highs were too rolled off for me, and that's unusual because I've got sensitive ears in terms of high frequencies and upper mid-range, and I don't like things that sound overly bright or overly harsh. So for me to turn around and say they were dark sounding tubes means it was really, really rolled off. I don't think I've ever said anything was dark sounding gear-wise pretty much in all my life. I'm usually the guy saying it's too bright. So I reached back out to my tube dealer, spoke to him, and he said, yeah, actually that is kind of a common complaint on those RCA black plates. He recommended I try some Mullards. So I ordered those, and it was amazing. It gave me the openness that I was looking for, the airiness, but the highs were very silky and smooth, which I love. And part of the reason why is because, yes, I listen to blues, I listen to jazz, I listen to opera, but I also listen to vocal trance. And vocal trance can sound harsh. So you got to find that balance on it where it doesn't. What I like to do is I buy typically OEM labeled tubes, so they may either be in the white box or an OEM type box. And what I mean by that is I am not a tube label snob. A lot of people want their tubes to display, like for instance, my Mullard tubes, they don't have the Mullard logo on them, but they are. They're made for another OEM brand. Or even the RCAs I bought didn't say RCA on them. They were made for Con Oregon, I think it was, or something like that. And you can save a significant amount of money. You're getting the same tube, but it either doesn't have that brand name logo on it, or the logo may be smeared or wiped off or something like that. So you got to buy from a reputable dealer, buy from somebody who's been in business a long time, who stands behind their products, which is the only way I'll do it. And I don't care what it says on the tube. I mean, the tubes in my Aqua are enclosed, so you can't see them. And the tubes on my integrated, well, my face isn't 2 inches away from the integrated. It's sitting over in the listening position, so I can't read what the tubes say, so why do I care? So in terms of the Aqua, that was relatively easy. That was, okay, I tried one set of tubes, it was a step forward. I tried another set of tubes, it was where I wanted it to be. But on my VAC integrated, I wanted to try different tubes, and I had a very different experience. I ended up reaching out to Kevin at VAC, and he explained some information to me, which, had I known in the beginning, would have made this tube journey much more economical and much better for me. I ended up reaching out to him in the middle, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But I want to highlight that because, guys, there's a lot of stuff I'm asked to talk about on my channel that I won't. The reason being is I don't make money off this channel. I'm not here trying to drive revenue in any way, shape, or form. I can be really picky about what I talk about. I only talk about what interests me or what I like. Heck, I did a video, I did 4 videos on $27 Ethernet switches and the sound difference that they could make that you can buy from Amazon. So that's easy. But the reason why I bring this up is because the reason why I talk about products such as Aqua or the VAC or the Antipodes Audio or any of the other products that I talk about, Fine Audio, they love their customer. They're very customer centric. They'll engage, they'll talk to you. Antipodes Audio, I mean, they're on the other side of the world from me. I email them, and my email response back time is usually in minutes, if not an hour or two. I mean, assuming it's not 3 in the morning their time. It's incredible. That, to me, will always sway me if I'm looking at 2 different products that are generally equal. I will always go with the product that I know has got a company behind it. So a huge thank you to Kevin, and I'll tell you what he said in a minute, because he helped make my life easier on the tube upgrade. Reached out to my normal tube dealer and spoke to him, and the first thing we wanted to do, now the VAC has got the 4 giant, I think it's 6550s, I can't remember, power tubes, and then it's got 5 12 AU7s and 1 12 AX7, and they're the smaller ones up front. So what I did is I purchased a Mullard for the 12 AX7, and I purchased 5 RCA clear tops because I remembered that, and they were OEM labels, so they don't say RCA or Mullard on them. And I remember where the black tops were dark, he felt that the clear tops were the opposite of that. So I said, okay, well, let's try those. And what's really cool about what VAC does is each of their tubes is actually labeled underneath. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out and I'm going to actually use the power of magical video editing, so you don't see me trying to open this box and failing miserably at it. I'll magically have this box open and the tube in my hand. Now, these are the factory tubes from VAC, and they actually have, like this one says V2. And in all the little spots, you can't see it, but they actually have them labeled. V1, V2, V3, V4, all that, and it matches the tubes. So when VAC does the final listening test at the factory, and Kevin listens to every single piece before it ships out to make sure it passes their test, their sound test, they then label the tubes to let you know where they were tested in what position. So when you receive the amp, you simply take the tubes out and put them right in the corresponding, and it's ready to go. I will say that one of the things I was really surprised at with the VAC tubes is, you know, they talk about how they spend a lot of time trying to find the quiet tubes and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah. Everybody says that. But holy moly, when I put those RCA clear tops in, that was one of the first things I noticed was how much more noise there was, hiss and background noise. Not like staticky noise, but background noise. It made me realize there really is something to VAC talking about how quiet the tubes are that they choose to put in there. So that was the first thing I noticed. But when I listened to my 3 reference songs before I just put on the general music, there was a big difference, and it was a massive step backwards for me from the factory tubes versus the NOS tubes. So I actually preferred the factory tubes. With the factory tubes, or rather with the NOS tubes, when I listened to my first of my 3 songs that I use for reference, Jose Carreras, Kiri, yes, there was, and you know I hate this word detail, there was more detail, but it wasn't more insight. And if you watch my video on the stealth cables, I talk about how the stealth cables to me offered more insight, but not detail. And what I mean by that is they offer me more information, but it's not detail at the sense of somebody turned up the treble and made it all artificial and bright and all that way. The RCA clear tops, somebody had turned up the treble. So while I was getting more detail, it was in the negative sense of detail. I think a way to describe it, because I also lost whether I listened to that song or whether I listened to, especially Holly Cole, Every Day Will Be Like a Holiday. The saxophone and the piano and her voice sounded less lifelike, sounded less organic, and sounded much cooler in tone. And the way I think the best way to describe it is, it's sort of like when you go to Home Depot and you need a new bulb and you see this, oh, look at this daylight bright bulb. It's kind of white blue and it's going to give you more detail. And we buy that thinking it's a good idea and we put it in our sockets and then we say, oh yeah, I'm seeing stuff that I didn't really see before. It's more detail. But then you shortly realize you don't like it. You realize it's got a blue a hue to it, a blue tint. And you compare that to a really good bright white bulb where I hate to say it's got a tinge of amber to it. It's just got a tinge of more natural and organicness to it. And when you put that one back in, you realize the detail is all there. I just didn't really notice it. And you realize that that tint towards blue, where somebody's turning up, in essence, the brightness on the RCAs, is not what I like in my system. That carried over into my song, the Liquid Love live version by Above and Beyond at the Hollywood Bowl, where it's a live recording. Her voice on the lead singer in the best of setups, and I use this song when I adjust my stealth cables because it's really good. Her voice, she can get up and larger and project more forward in the recording. But if you go too far on that cable, or if you go too far on the tube, it very quickly, her voice becomes nasally, sibilant, and harsh. Especially there's one part in the beginning, probably about 30 seconds in, where there's some horns, and they can very easily become harsh if you listen to it at higher volume levels like I do. With the RCAs, clear tops, very harsh, didn't like it at all. I also tried a Taylor Swift song, the 10-minute version, and I'll put that up on the screen here. And it was just, she had a coolness tinge to her voice that was not flattering. So I said, this is an epic fail because I actually went 2 steps backwards from where I was with the factory tubes. So I called up Kevin. I said, Kevin, this is what happened. And it was interesting because I talked to him about my previous experience with tubes, what I like, what I don't like. And he explained to me that they actually went through something like 200 tubes listening to them in terms of voicing and finding the sound that they like. He did have experience with the RCA clear tops. I don't want to say what he thought about them because it was in reference to my personal taste. But I will say that they ended up going with the tubes they went with because they felt it offered the best all-around sound on tubes that you can easily get through them to resupply if you ever need to. So I said, well, Kevin, is there a way that I don't need to replace all the 12 AU7s? Can I just replace like a 12AX7 and maybe one 12 AU7? And he said yes. And he told me which position was in. That should be the first #1 tube that I changed, that is a 12 AU7, to get the most benefit in the preamp section. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna order some other tubes. I'm only gonna order one 12AX7 of a couple of different brands to try. In the meantime, I'm gonna go back. I put the factory stock tubes back in, but I left the Mullard in the 12AX7 because I had it. I wanted to compare the 12AX7 Mullard to the factory 12AU7s, whereas before I had the 12AX7 Mullard and the RCA clear tops. Up till now, this has given me the best sound. It gave me a little bit more openness, a little bit more spaciousness. Holly Cole's voice now shifted back into more texture, more warmth to it, more tangible. You could just palpable voice. And her piano sounded more natural. It sounded less tinny. The saxophone sounded much more full-bodied and throaty. Also with Jose Carreras and Curie, I still had that extra bit of detail that I had with the RCA clear tops, but now it shifted from detail to insight. So I could hear a little bit more into the choir and how they were breathing and inhaling and exhaling, but I didn't have any of the harshness with it. And same with Above and Beyond. It sounded more organic, lifelike. The hardness was gone. Her voice, the lead singer, had gone from being bright and sibilant to just being present and there. And the highs were definitely much more silky and smooth, something that I very much appreciated. I was then able to go into very long listening sessions, whether it be vocal trance or whatever. It made me really want to engage in the music. And there's one song that really sums it up. There is Alvin Bishop, Fooled Around and Fell in Love. I love that song. When my system is dialed in, it sounds huge, and you end up swaying with the music, and it's just so engaging and making you want to just listen to it. When I had the RCA clear-tops, and this was kind of the final nail in the coffin for them for me, I got about 25 seconds into that song and I just wanted to turn it off. I just could not get engaged in that music. So for me, yes, tonal balance is very important, but there's that intangible of when I just close my eyes and I turn off my heavy listening brain, am I swaying with the music? Is my foot tapping? Am I wanting to listen to the music more? Am I wanting to listen to the full song? And so far, the Mullard with the factory tubes gave me that. It's the best of both worlds up till now. So the RCA clear-tops, they're out. They were horrible in the system. I will say that what I ordered for the 12AX, the 12AU7, I did order an actual Mullard version because I know that through the Aquila Scala DAC and now through this, I like the sound of those. But I also ordered a Mazda tube to try. And the reason why is because I considered Telefunken, from what my tube guy was telling me, they can be, really ruler flat and they can err on the terms of brightness similar to the RCA clear-tops. I wanted to stay clear of that. And then the Valvo kind of caught my eye because my understanding of those, and he confirmed, is that the mid-range can be a little bit more seductive than the Telefunken, but they can still sound bright. And I didn't want that as well. So he felt that the Mazda was going to give me the best of both worlds, because don't forget, I need a tube that can still rock along with have all the finesse for the opera and vocals and things like that. The Mazda would give me a little bit more brightness, not much, but would also give me a different type of mid-range and bass, and it would be a good happy medium. So I have those tubes on the way. Hopefully you'll receive them this weekend. I'm going to let them burn in for about 100 hours. I will tell you that everybody seems to say 50 hours is enough for tubes to burn them in and get their best. I have personally found on every NOS tube I have ever tried, it's much closer. It happens somewhere between 75 and 100 hours for me. That it just sounds the most open. The highs are the most natural at that point from that tube. You get out any of that initialness of those tubes. So I do that on all the tubes, and it does make a difference. So guys, please comment down below. Tell me what tubes you use, what has been your experience. I was really surprised for me that putting in the NOS tubes was such a huge step backward that it made it to the point where I didn't want to listen to my system. And that there was actually a balance between factory and NOS that yields the best results. And thank you to Kevin for spending the time talking to me. And I would say that if you have a good tube manufacturer on your piece of product, talk to them, see what they've tried. Tell them what your sound is like and what you're listening to and what you're trying to accomplish. They could end up saving you a lot of hassle, along with finding a good tube dealer that can help set you up in the right direction. And there's somebody that is reputable, and you know that if you're buying an OEM one, for instance, or a white box, you know you're really getting what you're getting. I personally would not be buying off of these Amazon stores or these eBays or people like that. I've just seen too much fraud. But if there's somebody that you've dealt with before that has got a really good reputation, then go for it. But just be careful. I will leave you with one other thing. Some of these NOS tubes, and the place where I buy the tubes from, I talked to him about this. They've got Mullards that are $500, $700. That's not for me, guys. The most I want to spend on an NOS tube is my sweet spot is somewhere between the 80 and, if I only need one of them, I'll go up maybe to $115. But typically I like to be under that $100 per tube price point. And the reason being is once I find a tube I like, I'm going to get 3 or 4 backup and have them ready to go. So that's been my journey on this. I was excited to share that with you. I thought it was really interesting how backwards it went. Let me know what tubes you like, what you're running for tube gear, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, I will have an update video with the other tubes once we get those in the next couple of weeks. Thanks for watching.